major actions on foreign visas that will have massive implications, and we need to talk about it. Because yesterday, Rubio directed U.S. embassies and consulates to temporarily stop scheduling new appointments for foreign student visa applications while the State Department prepares to expand social media screening. With that move then being outlined in a State Department cable that was first reported by Politico and has since been obtained and verified by other outlets. And specifically there, the cable states, effective immediately, all consular sections must stop scheduling new appointments and remove all unclaimed appointments for student and exchange visas in order to prepare for the social media vetting expansion. Though, according to the New York Times, foreign citizens with existing interview appointments for student or exchange visas should, in theory, still be able to attend those. But then also, very notably here, it is unclear exactly what those new guidelines will entail. Because the cable, it only says that the State Department is, quote, conducting a review of existing operations and processes for screening and vetting student and exchange visas and plans to issue guidance on expanded social media vetting for all such applicants. But you also had Politico reporting that the document alludes to executive orders that are aimed at keeping out terrorists and battling anti-Semitism, which I will say also tracks given the fact that Rubio has repeatedly spoken about canceling student visas, revoking permanent residency status, and studying the social media history of foreign visitors. With that then largely in relation to what's happening with Israel and Gaza. And actually, when asked about the cable in a press briefing, you had State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce responding with this.
If you're discussing that, that's something that has not been discussed publicly. It would have to be leaked material if it exists. What I can remind everyone of, which we've discussed for months here, is that we use every tool in our tool chest to vet anyone coming in who wants to come into this country. Every sovereign country has a right to know who's trying to come in, why they want to come in, who they are, what they've been doing, and at least hopefully within that framework, determine what they will be doing while they're here. So that's nothing new.
Right, so you had that, but she also then refused to say what the current process is for vetting applicants' social media or how it might change. And then in a statement to the Times, the department just reiterated her remarks about using all available information. And while you had the agency noting that visa applicants have been asked to provide social media account information since 2019, it also didn't specify what could cause an applicant to be flagged for rejection under a new social media policy. And then, to that point, it's kind of just unclear how any changes would significantly alter recent policies that have already been implemented. Because, back in March, Rubio sent another cable to consular officers directing them to study the social media content of certain applicants for various visas, including exchange visas and student visas. And last month, you had the Department of Homeland Security announcing that it would start screening non-citizen social media accounts for anti-Semitic content as reasons to deny visa and green card applications, including those of foreign students. And with all that said, one possibility is that the new State Department policy is just meant to provide more explicit guidance to consular staff on what kind of social media content should raise red flags, especially because according to reports, State Department officials have been privately complaining for months that past guidance has just been too vague, with Politico explaining. It's unclear, for example, whether posting photos of a Palestinian flag on an X account should force a student to undergo additional scrutiny. But then also, regardless of the exact details of how this policy will be implemented, you have many immigration, law, and First Amendment experts condemning the move, with them arguing that this is just yet another attempt to crack down on free speech and censor pro-Palestine speech on campuses. Because as we've talked about many times before, the administration has launched a sweeping effort to revoke the legal status of thousands of international students in the U.S. who have expressed pro-Palestinian sentiment. But this latest step, it has experts saying it goes even further. With, for example, Stuart Anderson, the executive director of the National Foundation for American Policy, saying that this new move, it indicates that the administration is trying to prevent student visa applicants who disagree with their views from studying in America, period. Though it also makes sense why they'd focus on that, because it is much easier than trying to remove people who are already here. Because as people like Anderson have explained, this administration's attempts to deport existing foreign students, quote, makes what the State Department has been doing legally questionable for students inside the country. But then adding, by focusing more attention on people before they get to the U.S., they would cut off legal avenues that people would have once they're in the U.S. But, and depending on if it's part of the intent, as a result, Anderson and many other experts argue that this plan could discourage more foreign students from trying to come to the U.S. while also dramatically slowing down student visa processing. And that specifically is something that could have very, very serious economic consequences. Because what many people might not realize is that international students, they bring in billions of dollars to the U.S. economy. They bolster the country's STEM sectors, and they provide essential funding for both public and private universities. In fact, according to one recent analysis, more than 1 million international students attend colleges in the U.S. each year. And during the 2023-24 school year, they contributed nearly $44 billion to the U.S. economy by paying for tuition, housing, and other costs of living. Right? And part of the reason why they contribute so much to the economy is because universities rely on them to pay full tuition, which constitutes a very significant portion of annual revenues for many U.S. colleges. In fact, fact, international students actually pay a tuition rate that is higher than normal out-of-state tuition at some public colleges. And that, of course, in addition to the American students who are attending those same schools paying lower in-state tuitions. And at both public and private schools, they often get financial aid from the colleges directly or through federal programs. So as a result, you have experts saying that foreign students can actually end up contributing more than 1.5 times as much as their American student counterparts in tuition. The international students essentially help subsidize lower costs for American students, which is why you have so many people arguing that having less international students, it could make it more expensive for American students to go to college. And so it's entirely possible and plausible that what we're going to see are massive consequences, not only for the universities, not only for American students, but also for the US workforce, especially when it comes to tech. But then all of that, it brings us to the second piece of visa news that I want to hit on, and that is that today we saw Rubio announcing even more new visa restrictions on foreign nationals. So I will say these appear to be very different from the ones we just talked about. With Rubio writing in a post on X, for too long, Americans have been fined, harassed, and even charged by foreign authorities for exercising their free speech rights. Today, I am announcing a new visa restriction policy that will apply to foreign officials and persons who are complicit in censoring Americans. Free speech is essential to the American way of life, a birthright over which foreign governments have no authority. And in a press release outlining the move, you had Rubio explaining it further, saying, in some instances, foreign officials have taken flagrant censorship actions against U.S. tech companies and U.S. citizens and residents when they have no authority to do so, and adding, it is unacceptable for foreign officials to issue or threaten arrest warrants on U.S. citizens or U.S. residents for social media posts on American platforms while physically present on U.S. soil. With him then seemingly hitting at the crux of what this move will really do, stating, it is similarly unacceptable for foreign officials to demand that American tech platforms adopt global content moderation policies or engage in censorship activity that reaches beyond their authority and into the United States. And it's really that last part that appears to be the real meat and potatoes here, because Trump and many others in the Republican Party have long complained of anti-conservative censorship, especially on social media, both at home and abroad. Though that appearing to kind of fly in the face of numerous studies that have actually shown very little evidence of that. Instead, what was often found is that content that was removed was actually just misinformation or hate speech. But also, very notably, as tech companies have started to unwind policies moderating that kind of content in the US, leaders in other parts of the world have responded by imposing new regulations, which is then something that's pissed off many conservatives, including Vice President J.D. Vance, who argued that foreign leaders are censoring American companies and suppressing dissenting views by labeling them as disinformation or hate speech. So there, you've had EU leaders hitting back by arguing that the rules are necessary to compel tech companies to remove content that they deem illegal, like hate speech and child sexual abuse material. Right, and while Rubio didn't name any specific countries or foreign leaders in his post or statement, this move, it comes as Vance and others in the Trump administration have been particularly vocal about their opposition to European moderation laws. Laws that they argue are hostile to free speech, and then beyond that, it also comes amid a high-profile battle between Elon Musk and a Brazilian Supreme Court judge who ordered him to take down accounts and posts on X that were accused of spreading misinformation. But then, going back to what Rubio announced, you have experts saying that it would be a major escalation to start restricting foreign nationals from visiting the US, including on official business, just because they're enforcing policies that comply with their own laws and rules. With, for example, one State Department official reportedly telling Politico, if there's an American Nazi posting stuff in France and France is like banning pro-Nazi stuff, is Rubio going to say that the owners of that French platform doing content moderation are barred from entry to the United States? Which is then also why you have some saying that it is hypocritical for the US to try to force other countries to regulate speech as they see fit in the name of preventing American censorship. And that, in addition to people arguing that this move is especially hypocritical given the fact that Rubio and others in the administration are cracking down on pro-Palestine speech so intensely. Right, and arguing that it's just absurd that he's revoking visas for people who engage in speech that the administration deems unacceptable, but then punishing foreigners who are doing the exact same thing in their countries. So then, on the other side, you have many conservatives applauding the move, arguing that it's actually an important step to combat censorship. And so while we wait to see how all of this plays out, I'd love to know your thoughts in those comments down below. And then I've got more news you need to know about in just a minute. But first, growing up, the advice was often trust your gut, and I've applied that a lot in my life. Right? Nowadays, the chatter isn't just about trusting your gut, but also what your gut health means for your immune system, your digestion, and even your mental health. And while the internet is stacked with companies making tall claims, one company stands out for scientific integrity and transparency, and that is today's sponsor, Seed. Right, specifically, Seed's DSO1 Daily Synbiotic, the only thing that saved my stomach from full-on digestive meltdown. What makes DSO1 different is it's a synbiotic, not just a probiotic. It combines prebiotics and probiotics to support a healthy gut and overall health. And yeah, they bring the receipts with actual peer-reviewed research. And I'm not alone, right? This stuff has a cult following for a reason. It actually does what it claims. And so if you're ready to cut through the noise and truly nurture your gut health, give DSO1 a shot. Seed is offering y'all 25% off your first month, and you'll receive this 30-day supply, refillable glass jar, and travel vial. And after that, they send sustainably packaged refills. So if you're ready to upgrade your gut health, scan the QR code or go to the link in the description and use code DeFranco25 for 25% off your first month plus free shipping. Seriously, your future digestion digestive system will thank you. Not out loud, because that would be terrifying, but you get the idea. But then, getting back to the news, Elon Musk hasn't even left the White House yet, and he's already breaking from Trump and Republicans. Because you now have Musk criticizing the president's so-called big, beautiful bill, which is that budget that passed the House last week.